Greg, I've got you, mate. How good is this? You're in Japan. I'm sunning it in Dublin. There's some live shows, a bit dusty. How are you, my friend?
Jim, I'm good, thank you, mate. Obviously joining you from here in Japan this evening. Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. Enjoying Japan, and yeah, great to chat to you today.
Well, we've got a load to get through because it's the week of the Calcutta Cup, as we know, as you know, and you're more well versed on that. So we'll get into that. But how is Mr. Grigg in Japan? Do they call you Mr. Grigg?
Nah, not so much, mate. Died down a little bit, to be fair, which is quite nice. But Japan's awesome. There's lots of great parts of it. Really enjoying the culture, all the different elements of it, different things to see and do. And as much as the rugby side, it's obviously a great experience for the family as well, mate. So we're enjoying that, and yeah, Rachel's doing well as well.
That's class. So for the listeners, right, and people watching this, I'm only going based on rumours because I wasn't there in 2019. But from chatting to the lads, when the World Cup was there in 2019, you were like a legend there on the buses, on all them big shiny billboards and stuff like that. What was the crowd? What was it with you and the Japanese fans? They loved Mr. Grigg so much.
They did, mate. It was very strange at the start. So what actually happened was 2000. It goes back to 2015 when we obviously played Japan down in Kingsholm, and the week previously to that they played, or 4 days previously to that, they played South Africa and beat them. And I think the audience on the Japanese TV was fairly small for the South Africa game. I don't know the numbers, 3 or 4 million, or probably even less. And then obviously because they won that game, the next game up was against Scotland. And like something ridiculous, like the TV audience went up like 50-fold or whatever. And obviously I was playing for Scotland. I was captain in Scotland and had a fairly decent game. And then ever since then, they seem to love me. And we came on tour in 2016 as well. So I guess that was my first experience of it, coming to Japan.
And were they calling you Mr. Grigg, or am I just making that up?
I think that was Wilson, mate, that started that. Ryan Wilson, to be fair. He was quite funny, mate. He was going around, he was just following me around with his video phone, just shouting Mr. Grigg at me. So, yeah, it was fairly funny during the World Cup.
Yeah, it's class seeing you do well over there, Greg. I know it's a different culture and we don't get to see much of it. If Eddie sees snippets on social media and a bit on YouTube, but do you get to watch stuff from over there here? Like, how up to date are you with all the matches and players and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I try my best, Jim. Obviously the time difference makes things fairly hard to watch matches live, but normally I'll catch up, a couple of days later, and watch games on my laptop, and obviously keep a keen eye on what's happening back home in Scotland and also around Europe as well. I'm doing a little bit of coaching with my team here in Japan, so trying to watch as many games as I can, mate. Being a rugby nose, as you know, I am sometimes, Jim. So, but keeping an eye on things back home, and hopefully Scotland are in a good place. I'm sure we'll get on to in a couple of minutes' time.
Yeah, what do you make of it all then? What do you make of Edinburgh and Glasgow at the minute? Edinburgh doing well in Europe, not so well in the URC. Glasgow under Franco Smith have put in some awesome performances. What do you think the lay of the land is with the two teams?
Yeah, I think overall across the two teams, pretty strong. I think, as you mentioned there, Edinburgh will probably be a little bit disappointed in terms of where they sit, because as you saw last weekend, they had an awesome victory and an awesome performance against the strong Saracens teams, obviously in the Champions Cup. So, to beat teams of that calibre, it shows they've got some firepower. And I really thought some of the Edinburgh players really stood out last weekend. And as you say, Glasgow under Franco Smith going a bit better in the league, and playing a sort of real positive brand of rugby, and sort of coming to the table hopefully at the right time. Certainly for Scotland, but it's great to see both the pro teams going pretty well.
It's amazing how quickly it comes round, because we've got the World Cup in France in a few months' time, and again, something that I used to chat to many people about, and I probably mentioned to you, one thing that frustrated me was these 4-year cycles that coaches work under. It's about the World Cup in 4 years. For like from my point of view, if you're in Ireland, if you're in New Zealand, or South Africa, and England, maybe not in England, but if you're these big teams in the top three, you can maybe think about these cycles. It frustrated me when I was in the, well, maybe it's because I wasn't in the team because they were looking forward to the World Cup in 4 years' time. So maybe there's a bitterness around me thinking that. But there is all the talk around the World Cup. We're not going to talk about that. How important is this Six Nations? Do you think it's important because of the World Cup, or do you just think it's important because we need to start doing something?
Well, it's always important because it's the biggest tournament probably in the world, or one of the biggest tournaments in the world. Clearly, the Six Nations outside of the World Cup, so it's obviously a very important year. But certainly from a Scottish perspective, we want to do well in the Six Nations. It's a tournament we've not cracked, at all. We've had a couple of finishes in I think third spot. Obviously, the boys are finished fourth in the last couple of seasons, so. It's a really difficult tournament, clearly, but it's one that I know the Scottish boys are desperate to try and get some more success in. In a World Cup year, I guess it just makes it more exciting for the fans, for people looking in, because it's almost the pre-show before the big show, as it were. But it's gearing up to be a heck of a Six Nations, that's for sure. With teams like France playing away in Ireland and stuff like that. So it's going to be massive.
What is the expectation, Greg? Former captain. I was vice captain for about 3 minutes against Romania until the coach ran on and said, "No, you're not captain. You're not vice captain." But from someone who has captained the team and one of the best and most emotional captains I've worked under, Greg, what's the expectations for the fans listening to this? Because really, right, you want to win the World Cup, you want to win the Six Nations, you want to win a Grand Slam, but also you have to be realistic, right, in terms of the quality of some of the other teams. So now you're out of it and you're looking in. For the fans, what is the realistic expectations of this team?
Well, starting obviously talking about the Six Nations, I think, for me at the moment, Ireland and France are out in front, and I think they've shown that with the performances. Especially Ireland. Not especially Ireland, because France have been excellent as well. But Ireland have a real positive wins, down in places like New Zealand, and you just don't go there and win unless you're playing extremely good rugby, which they are. So, what's good for Scotland, Jim, at the minute is that third, fourth place spot. I think if the boys can push up into that third place spot this year, that's great progress, because you don't take massive jumps, and history will prove that. You don't go from fourth, fifth in that table to straight up the first, or very rarely. So it's about climbing that ladder. It's about pushing it forward a little bit more. And I think England are obviously a little bit unknown at the moment in terms of they've got excellent players, but I think they always have. So it's how quick are England going to be able to come together in many ways. So hopefully, from a Scottish perspective, we're going to get them at the best time. We're going to get them first up when they've not had any games under Steve yet. But I think, knowing Steve, England are only going to get better as well. But I think, coming back to the question, in that sort of third, fourth spot, I think it's a positive result for Scotland, in my opinion.
We've had England's number for the past few years. Why is that?
I think probably the way England have set up to play, in my opinion, in the last few years. Lots of kicking. And I think, that kicking game can be hard to play against. But I think if the kicking game doesn't work exactly, or if your kicks are just slightly too long, you give the catcher a little bit time to get away and get that first pass away. And Scotland could really break the game up. And I think that's really played into Scotland's strengths over the last couple of years, and that's probably the only reason why. And the boys have probably taken a bit of confidence, obviously, from 2018. We beat them at home. 2019, it was that crazy game. We ended up, coming back and getting a draw. So you know what it's like, Jim. If you go well against teams, you start to get a bit of confidence, and you can beat them. So that's probably where it's came from. And credit to the boys that they played really well in the last 3-4 seasons, but they're going to have to reproduce that again, and what's going to be probably a sold-out Twickenham.
It was interesting. Interviewed Billy Vunipola, and I said, who's the team that you and the England boys want to beat? Like, what is the number one team? Is it South Africa because they've had your number? Is it an Ireland or France because they're the best teams? And he said Scotland. That's what he said. He said that is the team now. And maybe, Greg, you're partly to blame for that because of the videos that went viral with you with your tie around your head, singing No Flower of Scotland. It is still a thing, right? Like, as in, that is why this first game up, like the Scotland-England, England-Scotland, Calcutta Cup match, and I've played in 8 of them. It's a proper thing, right? There is that historic element to it. Is it still that big, do you think?
Oh yeah, very much so. I think Billy's answer probably suggests that as well. Coming from the English setup, and obviously they want to get one back because we're the smaller nation, and we've managed to take the spoils over the last few years, and that'll be why they'll be keen to put one back over on the Scotland team, and put us back in our box as it were. But and it just comes back to, I guess, credit to the Scotland team in my opinion over the last 3 or 4 times they've played England, because I've always said it and I always will, that England's the quality of players they've got is really high. The depth of players they've got is obviously really strong as well. Certainly we don't have anywhere near as much depth as somebody like England, but it just shows, on our day, because we have some really good players on our day, if we can keep everybody fit, we can go with the best teams in the world. So for Scotland, I guess it's just about can we keep that, or can we improve that consistency going forward? Because that was the frustrations from the team, last year. Great victory against England, I think it was, and then we slipped up against Wales in a test match we were in. We just got ill-disciplined, and then we just let the test match slip away. So it's about closing the gaps, closing the percentages, and getting over the line in these tight games.
Yeah, it's the same order this week. This season, we've got England first up and then Wales at home. And do you think there's a part of it because of the emotion around that England game and the build-up, not just from the players, but from the fans, from the media, that the lads get themselves that high up for it, that it's like sport, right? You struggle to replicate that energy. And I've been in changing rooms before, like you play against the All Blacks, albeit we didn't win, and then you've got like no disrespect to a Tonga or a Georgia or a lesser nation, a tier 2 nation. Your emotions aren't the same. I'm not saying that Wales are a tier 2 nation to get up for, but you know what I mean? That England game, it's so big and the lads have struggled emotionally. What are your experience of that emotion and that high to then try and replicate that the next week? Has that been the most difficult thing, do you think?
Yeah, probably. It's a fair point, Jim, I reckon. And, as you say, if you get that, it's that emotional roller coaster. If you put so much energy into the week one, and this year we've got England away, which is going to be a massive test. Going into that second week, a lot of times it can be really difficult. Not to get up for it, because you always are up for it when you're playing for your country. Of course, in Scotland are coming back to Murrayfield this time around, so that should help. But it is really difficult to replicate that week in, week out. And that's one of the challenges. That's a challenge for the coaches. It's a challenge for the leaders in the team. To try and make sure that is at the forefront of everybody's mind. But coming back to it again, the first game is obviously the most important.
What do you make of the Finn Russell, Gregor Townsend scenario, drama? What did it look like from where you were? And we are through it now, but from where you were in Japan, watching it all unfold, how did you feel about it all?
Well, I'll be honest, it wasn't great, was it? There's no point in beating around the bush, I think. Yeah, especially when, Gregor came out and he said he wasn't picking Finn, because of form and stuff. And so I just came out and said, look, I don't see eye to eye with him at the minute, and so I'm going a different direction. Because it was clearly obvious that was the case. I think so. I'm glad they're through it. I think hopefully they've worked the differences out, because we need Scotland need a full firing Finn Russell, somebody that's happy within the squad and really driving the team forward, because he's such a big part of that Scotland team. He's such a big character, and when Finn's happy, when Finn's confident, it's no surprise, in my opinion, that you see a better Scotland team play because the way he plays the game. He brings in other players into the game. He brings in, whether it be a Chris Harris in the 13 channel, whether he brings his wingers into the game, or Hoggy from fullback. It's no coincidence these players all play better when Finn's in the team as well. So, yeah, it's about time now we brush that to the side and they really got back to putting their best foot forward and sorting it out for the team, I guess.
And with Hoggy not being captain now, it just felt like there was not a weird dynamic, but the kind of three, like Ali Price, Finn, Hoggy, you see them on all the photos, like hanging about on the nights out there together. And I think Hoggy not being captain now, it potentially was a tough one for him to take, but I think we all agree it's probably the right decision for him to concentrate on his form. And I prefer, apart from when you were captain, Greg, I prefer the captain being in the forwards. I was actually with Rob Kearney last night, and there was a statement that he made which was quite interesting. No team has won the World Cup with a bat as captain, so someone can call me out on that if that is wrong and blame Rob Kearney. So with Jamie Ritchie, we might win the World Cup, but as in that relationship with Hoggy and Gregor, the captaincy, how much it means for him. Do you think he's better without the captaincy?
I didn't think he was bad with the captaincy, Jim. I think that was a tough time for everybody. The team probably wasn't playing great. Being relieved of the captaincy, what that can do for players sometimes is probably always a good thing. Especially Hoggy, you can just free him up to play his rugby. But I know how proud he is and how passionate he is about playing for Scotland. So that it was tough for him at the start, and because he does in the way he trains and leads that group, he is a real leader within the group. But hopefully because a lot of the stuff being captain, it's anyway. I love being captain of Scotland. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't like it I didn't love it all the time. That is for sure, because there's a whole heap of stuff that comes with, being the captain off the field, having to do this, do that, a lot of extra stuff that a lot of people don't see, and sometimes it gets fairly tiring. So yeah, in short, hopefully relieving him of the captaincy. You can just let him get back, play his rugby, still be real passionate. Obviously, he's naturally going to be a big leader within the squad, and hopefully he can stand alongside Jamie in that leadership role, because that's something I learned over my years is that it's that collective leadership that's the most important. There's no one person that's more important than the other. Essentially, in a rugby team, you need everybody firing. And certainly more so from a Scottish perspective, you need everybody playing close to 100% as they can to win test matches, especially in the Six Nations.
One of the things we've struggled with in Scotland, Grigg, is depth. One thing that I know when we played together, it seemed to piss you off a little bit, and I understood why, and we can talk about that, is around the project players and the residency rules and players being brought into the squad that have got no affiliation to Scotland, apart from they had a Scotty dog one day and they brought in. One thing I remember, Greg, when you were captain, and I won't name the players that were brought into the squad, but there were a number of players that came into the squad that were not Scottish. There was a residency thing, and they were put up in front of the team to sing the national anthem. They didn't know the words, and it all became a little bit embarrassing. And we'd laugh about it. Some of us players would laugh about it, but I always looked at your face and you were fuming because you were one of the most passionate Scotsmen in that squad. How are you about that now? Because you look at the team now, you look at the squad, the likes of Ben Healy coming in from Munster, Jack Dempsey, capped by Australia, and then some of the players that have really rocked up, like Duan van der Merwe. Pierre Schoeman has been one of the form loose heads in the world. There's talk of John Cooney potentially coming in. As a proud Scotsman and someone that's removed from it now, where do you stand on the residency and the project players playing for Scotland?
Well, it's a difficult one, Jim. I think, I guess when I was playing, I came to terms with it in my own way. I guess because, as you mentioned, I'm extremely passionate, and patriotic. I guess in terms of that's Scottish side of me. Obviously, I grew up, following the team. As a youngster, I used to go along to Murrayfield, and for me, it was a dream of mine to play for Scotland. So I guess when people came in and they didn't know the words and stuff. That really got to me. So yeah, I didn't mind so much if players came in and they'd at least done a bit of research and understood a little bit about our culture or the sort of the history of our country. I always remember VP Nell, being one of them. He used to come up to me and ask me about Flower of Scotland and stuff, for just little things like that. And when they come in and when they put their body on the line, I would always respect them for that. What I would say in terms of going forward from now, is I would just really like, as much as possibly we can, is to try and produce our own young Scottish players. Obviously, we do have lesser numbers than a lot of countries, clearly, because we're a smaller nation. But it should almost be a challenge within ourselves, is how many Scottish players can we bring through to be excellent? Because it's shown we can do it. You look at the team now: Hoggy, Finn Russell, Xander, Ali Price, all the guys that went on the Lions tour last year. So it can be done, and that's where I would like to see, I guess, a little bit more energy put towards, whether that be that Scotland under-20s programme, which, because we don't have any, we've only got the 2 pro teams. I think it's really, really important that your energy and resources are put into that sort of age group, because it's almost like a third pro team, and they're the next generation coming through. So how many can we produce from within? It should always be our first port of call, because listen, and it's not only Scotland, bringing in players from overseas as well. It is other teams as well. So Scotland's always had a bad reputation, but we've maybe had a couple of extra over the years. Again, coming back to the strength and depth things.
Scrum-halves, Greg, a bit of a talking point. Ali Price, you mentioned British and Irish line. His form hasn't been where it was. He's been a lot better of late. There's talk of Ben White starting against England. We're recording on Wednesday. The team will come out Thursday. George Horn's been playing really well for Glasgow. I like Ben Bellicott. He's not been in the squad. Who do you like? Who would you have, and why?
Well, I've been impressed by Ben White. To be fair, I was impressed with him the last time he played in the autumn test, I think it was. I think he's looked sharp. He's looked pretty dangerous. I think Ali, and I think, and this is one thing that I guess the top teams do. They understand sometimes players have a little bit of downtime. They can't perform peak every week. And I think a lot of the times, certainly for me, if I wasn't playing the best, I think if the coach gives you that confidence to pick you again, and not out with reason, clearly if you're playing poorly, you've got to be dropped, but give that confidence just to keep playing. And I think that connection with Finn, with Ali is really important. So I'd probably lean towards still picking Ali for this game, to be honest with. And if you need to bring Ben White off the bench and give him a good run at 35 minutes, then he's there to do. And if it doesn't go too well, you can change it up for the second game. So that going by what happened last weekend, Ali obviously played for Glasgow. He was allowed to go and play, so that would probably suggest that they're leaning towards Ben White for the first week, which isn't a bad selection. Because as I said, he's playing well.
When we talk about the build-up, Greg, and you actually put yourself into the changing rooms in Twickenham and then the following week in Murrayfield, that is the bit that I missed, right? That changing room bit. You walk in to the tunnel from the changing rooms and you walk out, and trying to describe it to Becky, my wife, and JJ's now 12. Dad, what was it like? What was it like? I really struggled to put it into words. And I know that you were a similar player with the emotional aspect of it. When you walk out onto the pitch, that feeling of being alive, that's the thing that I miss the most, something that I really struggle to explain what it is. Take yourself into that changing room, Greg, and for the listeners and people watching this, as captain, what do you say? What are them last words to the team before you play against England? I don't want to make you cry. I don't want you to make me cry, but you might do. I just remember you. I remember that look on your face, Greg, like a small man from the borders, and actually how much it meant. And they're the moments that I think really trying to grasp hold of and explain to people what it's like is really difficult. But just kind of sum up that emotion for you and what you would say.
Yeah, well, I did. I wore my heart on my sleeve, as it were, Jim, and I guess in the last minute, leading up to that Test match, especially against England, because sometimes that was a great learning point for me, I guess, over my career is really balancing up that emotion side of things. Sometimes I probably got it wrong, and earlier on in my career, I'd go too much emotion, and then that would get in the way of a good performance. So it's really about balancing up the two. I very much I'll touch on a little bit in terms of just making sure tactically we're nice and clear, and I'd probably go to somebody else to do that. Normally that'd be Finn. Finn, what's our last attacking point before we go out here? Go to somebody else for defence, and then I'll just try and bring it back to, right, what's important here? Let's be connected as a group. We're here as Scotsmen, whether it's down in Twickenham or we're about to go in Murrayfield. People are looking in on us. What are we portraying, out, and how's that going to come across? And real, just having a real focus, just on the start of the game, I guess a real togetherness. We've pulled on these blue jerseys, so what we're going to do? Are we going to bring these blue jerseys to life, or are we just going to be, another team playing in a blue jersey, type scenario? So, and just knowing the group, that was a huge learning point for me. Is what does the group need? Doesn't need love, doesn't need a stern word. And they were all great learnings, throughout my career.
And the Six Nations, then, how does it look for you? I know we spoke about that kind of third, fourth position. I think everyone can agree. We don't know. We don't know how it's going to go. We beat France in Paris a couple of years ago. But how do you envisage it if you take the emotion out of it and just solely look at the performance of some of the players, the team? How does it look? That game against Wales, we've got to win, right? I think that is the one where we really struggle against Wales for some reason. Maybe it's the physicality, I don't know. But for me, we've got to be targeting that home game.
Yeah, I would agree. With that, Jim. That's a game we're going to have to win. We're going to have to win definitely 2 out of 3 home games for sure. Clearly, Ireland's going to be the most difficult 1 out of the 3. Italy are playing well also. They're starting to turn the corner. They're getting better. They're playing a good brand of rugby with a bit of a tough edge to them as well. But us with the boys at Murrayfield, I'd fancy them to get up there. Historically, we've struggled against Wales, as you've said, and it's almost, we talked about why the team have done well against England over the last few years, probably because they've got a couple of wins, and then they get the confidence off the back of that. Whereas it's almost the other way against Wales, as we've struggled against them, in recent times, and that seems to creep into the mind. And to be fair to the Welsh boys, the regions have always been struggling and not going well, but they do turn into different animals when they pull on the red jersey of Wales, and certainly Warren Gatland coming back in, he is going to galvanise them a bit. But yeah, I think the weak ones, it's massive. I think Scotland are obviously away. I think Wales are at home to Ireland. Is that right? In week
that's
one,
right.
So it's a huge game as well. So if Ireland get up in that one, week 2 for us is going to be huge. We're going to have to really get stuck in, but hopefully the players can take real confidence from how the pro teams are playing, and how they've played in the last couple of Six Nations, and obviously they need to put a performance in against Wales this time around to get a win, because Wales will be good as well.
It's so good talking about the Six Nations with you, because I can see the smile on your face. We are traditionalists, and having played in the tournament, just to move away slightly, there's talk of the South Africa teams desperate to get in. You can see with them in the URC, now in Europe. You can't even call it Europe now, it's just the Champions Cup. It feels like something's happening, right? I don't know whether you can feel or see that from Japan. I don't know if you're having conversations with people, but there seems an inevitability around it. Commercially, it probably makes sense. Where do you stand on that as a proud Scotsman?
Yeah, well, I think you're always looking at ways to grow the game, Jim. I think, and sometimes you have to put your business head on and look at these things and what's best for the game of rugby. And I think going to a Seven Nations type scenario to me is probably too many, but just because of the way the calendar is. I know that the strains professional teams are under in terms of the length of the season already with things like Europe, and then you add into the fact the French, the French top 14 is such a long competition that you and I have both played in, and we know the difficulties that brings. So yeah, if it can be worked in, I see it as a positive thing. Again, because I think it's great for the game, but then does that cut adrift your New Zealands, your Australias? Do they then have to join up with Japan and stuff to make a new competition again? And so whatever aligns the global season again, that's getting talked about. Can it be aligned up to make a global season? That for me is, I guess, the ultimate goal. But it's really important to try and keep moving the game on as a spectacle. I think there's obviously been a lot of talk about the Netflix stuff, the Netflix series coming in and following the teams. But again, I think that's a real positive thing and really trying to grow the game of rugby.
So I put out our interview to the masses on social media and said that there are a few questions, and the people came back in their droves, millions. So we're going to go through them because I was going to ask the questions anyway, but I may as well just do it in this format because I have similar things. Right. So a few people said, Greg, have you forgiven Craig Joubert after that 2015 quarterfinal disaster? I went back and watched it on YouTube. I went back and actually watched it, and then I watched the BBC interview around it, and I couldn't. He sprang off the pitch straight after the game, and there's a picture of you and VP and Hoggy just in shock. Have you forgiven him? Never.
Listen, mate, it's gone. I don't really think about it nowadays, Jim. At the time, I think it was probably shock, just in terms of the whole debacle with him sprinting off the field. That was probably the biggest part. It was a tough pill to swallow, mate. I'm not going to lie to you. And it sometimes springs into your mind. You'd probably rather it doesn't, but yeah, probably not quite forgiven him, mate. And yeah, it'll be a difficult one to get over.
Yeah, so that's basically no. You've not forgiven him.
Yeah, basically no, mate.
Adam Shaw, and there was a few people, but shout out to Adam Shaw. Topical at the minute in Scotland. We spoke to Gregor about it on the podcast. We didn't publish it because I don't think they wanted it out there. But I think naturally we think that he's going to leave Scotland as head coach after the World Cup. It feels like the time's potentially right. Who would your next Scotland coach be? Don't say Vern Cotter, your dad.
Yeah, no, I think Vern's quite happy coaching Fiji at the minute. Somebody that would be really passionate about helping produce young Scottish players. What I touched on before when you were asking about players from outside Scotland, I think somebody with an understanding that they're coming into a smaller country, in terms of we really have to work hard to produce young players that our nation can be proud of, and that at the end of the day, that's from me looking in from out. That's all you want is to go along to Murrayfield to see the Scotland team play and be really proud of the players, and hopefully they can be connected to Scottish clubs, from coming through the youth system, because the next generation of players, we talked about scrum-halves before, and I think for me it's a real insult in terms of you were talking about players that have played for different countries in that position, but we've got good young scrum-halves: Charlie Shield, Ben Velicott, Jamie Dobbie, just to name three that are already sitting at the pro clubs in that tier underneath. They're young, they're Scottish, they'll be passionate about their country, and they're the next ones off the block, hopefully. So whether we could persuade Scott Robertson to come over and coach Scotland, I'm not so sure, but
I think he played at Ayr. Do you know he played in?
Yeah, I did hear that actually. Yeah, so obviously he looks like an excellent coach to me, an excellent man. I think Dave Rennie would have been good. Probably missed the boat, I would imagine. The rumours here in Japan are he's already signed for Kobe, because Wayne Smith's still director of rugby down there, I believe. So they've got a strong connection from the days with the Chiefs. So I think a New Zealand coach is pretty well suited to Scotland, Jim. I think because naturally we have to try and play a little bit quicker. because we don't have big bodies, big athletes normally across the board. So yeah, if we could get a New Zealander, somebody that really tries to think outside the box as much as they can, play smart, develop our young players, that would be a great fit.
Oh, Scott Robinson would be an absolute dream, mate. Scott Robinson, Razor. He would be an absolute dream. I don't think we'll get him. I think he'll be the All Blacks coach after the World Cup. But anyway, he'll hear this and then hopefully he will. Alistair Young, who is the best scrum half from Jed?
Oh, man, there's been a couple of good ones. I'll take third place. I'll give it maybe second to my Uncle Roy, and I'll give best to the one and only Gary Armstrong, who was my idol growing up. He's a man of few words, extremely humble, and probably talking to a few players that were able to play with him. He's one of the hardest players they played with, and I think at one point he was voted Scotland's best ever player. So I better not try to climb above Gary, otherwise he might give me a phone up and have something to say. So
I know
that's my list.
Yeah, I know that there was a team, the Borders, Reavers, and the more I've dug into it and the more that I've enjoyed watching Darcy Graham, obviously Hoggy, yourself, it's crying out for a team in the Borders, is it not? Like hard men, like you lads are hard that come from there. Like, can we see that happening again?
Oh, Jim, the purist in me would love it to happen. I think what the Borders struggles for is probably that a strong economy, to be honest, in terms of money to really fund a team and infrastructure. I guess in many ways, with a big stadium as well. So these are all important things nowadays in the modern game, and you're talking about sustainability for teams and stuff like that. So the purist in me says yes, but if I have my business hat on again, that might be quite difficult. But not my concern, but I hope that the young players from that region, we don't start, losing some of them as well, because over the years in the Scotland team, I think some of the best Scotland teams have had some great Borders players in them, and whether it be Kelly Browns, from in and around my era, Ross Fords. Obviously now you've got Hoggy, Darcy Graham, Rory Sutherland still in there, and normally the way we're brought up down there is feet on the ground, work hard, and it really suits to that sort of rugby dynamic. So hopefully the young kids in the region don't lose heart and they can keep pushing through.
If the Big Jim show takes off and I do all right at it, I might buy a team down there.
I'll hold you to that, mate. You can be the main sponsor, mate.
That'll do. I do like Melrose and Hoyk. I do like them two teams. I've been to Melrose a few times. Which one's the green one? That's Hoyk, isn't it? That's Hoyk.
That's Hoyk.
Oh, that's Hoyk, yeah. I did enjoy the green. What's it called? Green Yards? Greenland? What's it called?
Well, that's quite confusing, mate, because Melrose play at the Green Yards and Hoyk, they're at Mansfield Park, but they get called the Green Machine.
That's what I mean. I knew it was green something.
There you go.
We're going to buy a team there. A load of people have said, after rugby, what does that look like? So, Mr. Grigg, you're 37 now. That's right?
I am, mate.
How long have you got in you? How much more in the tank? How many more times can you go to the well?
Yeah, so the well's probably starting to run dry a bit, Jimmy. As you mentioned, mate, I'm 37 now. I've been lucky in many ways, mate, to stay injury free for the most part. I've had my few injuries, like everybody does at professional sport. But I've worked extremely hard to still be playing. So yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be too much longer. What comes after that, mate? That's very much in the forefront of my mind at the moment. As you probably know me, better than a lot of people, mate. I'm really passionate about the game. I'm really passionate about Scotland. So yeah, definitely, I'll stay in the game for sure at one point. When I would look to come back home, that I guess remains to be seen. But very much open to learning more about the game, experiencing new things, and if I go down the coaching route, which is something I'm thinking about at the moment, is just getting as much knowledge as I can, and what that looks like, and eventually bringing that back to Scotland, hopefully.
Well, that's class to hear. You won't be short of options, Mr. Grigg, when you do hang up the old slippers. So people will be happy to hear that. Right, a few funny ones. Well, potentially funny. So Sam Skinner, he messaged me on Instagram privately, so he didn't put it on the feed. He said, "What happened in
Oh
Browns in 2019?" I'm thinking when he's put that, we saw Darren. And for the listeners, Darren is Mr. Grigg's alter ego. What happened in Browns in 2019? Can you share anything, or is it no comment?
yeah. Well, that's probably no comment, mate. But yeah, that wasn't anything to do with me, by the way. That was
Deny.
just no, it wasn't. Well, let's just say the suspect's still out there. In terms of what happened, it was funny. It wasn't funny at the time, but it was one of them you look back on. I was out having a few beers, but yeah, no comment basically.
Did something get wrecked or something? Is it like
Nah, no, something never got wrecked, mate. But yeah,
was Darren walking around with his trunk out or not? No, nothing like that.
nah, nothing like that, mate. Nothing
No,
like that.
no comment. Another one came in from Roddy McAllister. Now, Roddy is the guy that keeps giving Finn these bloody Aston
Yeah,
Martins. How funny
yeah,
is
mate.
someone took a picture of Finn, I think it was during the Autumn Nation series, parked outside a kebab shop.
I saw that actually. It was funny.
Oh, gosh. But Roddy said, you've left your Trump Turnberry umbrella. Are you going to pick it up from him? Have you been playing golf at Donald Trump's gaff, have you?
I did play. It wasn't the last time I was back. It's a few times ago, mate. Yeah, I'm definitely coming back for that. Maybe you can give me a shot of one of these flash cars that Finn drives as well, but when I pick it up. But yeah, I still want that, mate. Please, so I'll come back when I'm back in the summer.
Last one, and I can't believe that you're going to this. I had no idea, but Robbie McRobbie said to me that you come into the Hong Kong Sevens in April. Well, it's the end of March, April. You ain't been before. All I'm saying is bring your goggles and bring a snorkel and bring your drinking boots, Greg. Are you looking forward to that? What are you doing there? You an ambassador at the Sevens, or are you going to play? What are you thinking?
Mate, if Scotland were still playing, I might have tried to play, Jim, but Great Britain now, so I might struggle to get a game. I'm an ambassador, mate. I'm going out. Yeah, as an ambassador, my company here, or my club, sorry, NTT, have kindly let me go. Just by chance, we do have a week off, so that's worked really well. Really lucky. They've been trying to get me out there for a couple of years now, so I'm really looking forward to getting down to Hong Kong. I think, obviously, Doddie had a fantastic relationship and I know Hong Kong's got a soft spot for the big man. There's a dinner going on there. I think it's on the Wednesday night, I believe. So I'm hoping to get along to that and try and help raise a fair bit of money for My Name's Doddie Foundation as well, and as well as having a good time. Once you get a little bit older.
Exactly. Hey, you got to let the hair down. Last time we were there, actually, Doddie was there. It was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and we did this big event there, and it was all the greats of rugby. George Grigg was up on stage, Brian O'Driscoll. I was going to say myself there. I was there, but Sir Billy Connolly was there. It was absolutely amazing, and to think that Doddie was there, and it was one of them things, with MND and people being affected by that. At the beginning, it's almost like it's not real. We're there with Doddie on stage and he's having a laugh and he's shooing people in the rucks and stuff. And he's got Brian O'Driscoll at the bottom of a ruck stamping all over him. And the energy in the room that day for the people who are listening from Hong Kong, the fact that we are going back there and we're going back there without Doddie, but still talking about him and, putting
that's it,
as
man.
much as we can into the foundation.
Yeah, and that's going to be Doddie's legacy, isn't it? And it's going to be an incredible one, mate. And hopefully one day they can crack this the horrible disease that is MND. And I think the people of Hong Kong, the expats, it shows. In many ways, it shows what's great about rugby, doesn't it? Because it's such a small world in terms of a rugby world when you really hammer down and the amount of money that's been raised from people back in Scotland to all over the world to obviously Hong Kong. They've raised a huge amount. So, I know the foundation are hugely grateful. And, as Doddie would say, you want everybody to have a great laugh, mate. So hopefully we can have a lot of fun over there as well.
Yeah, we absolutely will. Greg, we'll leave it at that. And I can't wait to see you in Hong Kong. You're missed in Scotland. I think a lot of people want you back in some capacity. And it's great to hear that potentially is on the table once you've done the rounds across the world and sorted out whether or not the yen wants to carry on for Mr. Grigg.
Jim, pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Class, mate.